Right, in this lecture, we're going to be talking about part 4 of the listening test in IELTS, and we're going to be focusing on note-taking skills. Right, in terms of note-taking skills, what we need to understand is that you will be hearing a monologue or a lecture from one person, and then you will have to note down, you'll have to take notes. In this one, this is the most technical part of IELTS, and it's very academic in the sense of, if you're doing the academic test, it's going to be very, very tough. It's going to be about science, about different academic areas. So you have to be very careful and you have to learn the skill of note takings, okay? The strategies for summary, diagram, and table completion is what we're going to look at as well. Awareness of correlation between part 4 and real life skills. We'll mention that, and here a monologue set in an educational or training context. And this is the most challenging of all 4 parts. So let's just take it really slowly and understand this part in detail. All right, academic note-taking, focus on the lesson. So we're gonna focus on one lesson. We're gonna hear one lesson, and then we will see, what kind of lesson it is. So you will be taking notes. Just note down the things that you can hear. Note down the key skills. The first things, what is the lecture about? What is the topic? And note down the keywords and phrases. All right, you can't note down everything, but you will be noting down the things that you can note down. All right. So I'm going to play this recording and you will note down the things that you can. Okay.
This recording is from the British Council. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first lecture of our new course in positive psychology. While some people may associate psychology with looking at what's wrong with us and at what problems we have, there is much more to psychology than that. Positive psychology, for example, looks at how to help people become happier. This lecture begins with a question. What makes a happy life? Now, I'm going to give you one possible answer. A happy life is a life in which you are completely absorbed in what you do. Now, how does this compare with what you and your partner said? This answer comes from the work of Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi and the theory of flow. Csikszentmihalyi is a psychologist who has spent much of his professional life on the study of what makes people happy and how we can find happiness.
All right, so you might have noted down a few things. I just wanted to give you an overview of what are the things you will note down just to get into a rhythm. We will do this activity completely. I just wanted to give you an overview as to, these are the things you will have to note down. You'll have to note down the skills and then you'll have to answer the questions. Okay. Now, compare your notes with your partner. Again, this is an online course. You will be working on your own here. So you will have to just compare your answers and just look at your answers. Did you know before listening what lecture were you going to be listening about, or what the lecture was going to be about? What's the answer to it? Is it yes or no answer? All right. B, was it possible to write down everything the lecturer said? How would you describe the words that you did take down? C, in this lecture, what else might the lecturer use to clarify his points? Okay, let's look at the answers to these 3 questions. So the first question, for example, did you know what the lecture was going to be about? No, you didn't know what the lecture was going to be about. In a real lecture, you would, so we're relating it to the question to a real-time academic note-taking skills and the IELTS. So in here, did you know what the lecture was going to be about? No. In real lecture, you would likely have an idea of the topic discussed, as this will be in your course handout and will have been mentioned in the previous lecture. It's unlikely that you would know nothing in advance, right? In IELTS, you see the question in advance of the audio being played. these questions will give you insight into what the topic is. You will read the prompt, you will try to understand, okay, what the topic is going to be. You will not have much time to read, to be honest, but you'll kind of get an idea of what you're going to be listening for. What was it possible to write down everything the lecturer said? How would you describe the words that you did take down? No, it's not impossible. It's not possible to write down every single word in the audio or in the lecture. It's important that you listen to the keywords, content words that carry the message of the lecture. So let's just think about it, right? It's not possible to write down every single word in the audio. It's important that you listen for keywords, key information. And key information is going to be things like nouns, names of places, and verbs, and what something does, or the examiner, the audio could be about explaining a process. So you really need to note down. The blanks are going to help you as well as to what kind of information you should be noting down, but you should be taking notes. All right, that's the main idea here. In IELTS completion tasks, you'll need key content words to complete the gaps. All right. In this lecture, what else might the lecturer use to clarify his points? You might have a visual as well. You might have handouts. You might have PowerPoints and diagrams. And IELTS, in real life, that's what you would have. When you will go to a lecture, they will put up a PowerPoint. They will give you handouts. They'll show you diagrams. And IELTS is very similar, right? These types of visual aids are mirrored in the question types. They might give you a note completion. They might give you diagram completion. They might give you a table completion. All right. Now let's just talk about a little bit here. For example, in this one, the theory of flow, founded by, it's very hard name. She means Sky. It was really hard for me to pronounce it, but that's the person's name. Suggests that happiness is not a passive response to some events, but so you have to look for what kind of events it's talking about, but something that we must seek in our lives, inspired by observations. And by the way, you wouldn't have much time to read everything, but you have to just look for the kind of information that there is, and you'll have to read around the blanks, and then when you listen, you'll have to then respond to it. Before you listen, consider the following points. You'll have to note down what the topic is. You have to understand the instructions. Again, by instruction, I mean by how many words can you write. No more than 2 words or a number. Okay, so that's very important. Parts of a speech. What part of speech can you use? Well, is it a noun, a verb, adjective, adverb? You have to pay attention on that. And then logical answer. What a logical answer could be. When you read out your notes, you will have to think about what logical answer could be. Keywords. What are the keywords that you have noted down? These are some of the things you'll have to think. All right, now let's just I'm going to play the recording again, and you will try to fill in the gaps here. Let's do it.
This recording is from the British Council. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first lecture of our new course in positive psychology. While some people may associate psychology with looking at what's wrong with us and at what problems we have, there is much more to psychology than that. Positive psychology, for example, looks at how to help people become happier. This lecture begins with a question. What makes a happy life? Now, I'm going to give you one possible answer. A happy life is a life in which you are completely absorbed in what you do. Now, how does this compare with what you and your partner said? This answer comes from the work of Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi and the theory of flow. Csikszentmihalyi is a psychologist who has spent much of his professional life on the study of what makes people happy and how we can find happiness. Csikszentmihalyi suggests the theory that happiness is not caused by external events or things that happen to us. Our perception of these things and how we see these events either makes us happy or sad. In other words, if we want happiness, we have to actively look for it. However, this does not mean that we should always look for happiness. Csikszentmihalyi believed that our happiest moments happen when we are in a state of flow. The theory of flow can be summarized like this. When we are totally involved in or focused on what we are doing, we are in a state of flow. Csikszentmihalyi got the inspiration for this theory when he noticed how artists worked in a studio. They completely lost track of time. They didn't notice they were hungry or tired, and they could work for hours, even days, without stopping. Anyone I've spoken to who has experienced this state of concentration has said it's difficult to explain. The best way to explain it is that it is like being in a river, and the flow of the water carries you away. For the rest of this lecture, I will explore this theory of flow in more detail. First, we will look at Csikszentmihalyi's life and how it influenced his ideas. Then we will look at the conditions that go with a state of flow. What creates flow exactly? Finally, we will look at activities that can help us achieve flow in our everyday lives. Will this course make you happy for life? Well, maybe. Maybe. Right, let's get started. If you look at the next slide.
Okay, cool. So you got the idea, right?
Is from the British Council. To find more.
All right, you got the idea. You got the answers. Csikszentmihalyi, pretty hard name to pronounce, really. So you have to be careful. Now, not always is going to use the same. He's going to paraphrase, obviously. But if you know what sort of information you're looking for, then you will be able to, if you have taken notes, you'll be able to then relate and fill in these gaps. All right. Let's look at the answers now. All right, answer number one is external. So here it says in response to external events, right? We must be actively looking for it, right? Actively seek in our lives, observe, inspired by the observations of who he observed, Csikszentmihalyi, our artists, and then talk about, they don't feel what? They don't feel hungry and thirsty. They don't feel hungry and tired. And he, the flow of concentration that carries you away is likened to that of a river. He says that, people who stay in that flow, it's like a river flowing. So you should have taken that down, and it's easy for you to, when you read, you should be able to get that down here. All right, let's look at another example here. So what we need to do here is work with your partner and take 5 seconds to glance on the right-hand side, glance the diagram. So you have to glance the diagram here in 5 seconds. You wouldn't have much time, and that's what I'm saying, that taking notes is going to help you here. What is the topic of the lecture? The topic of lecture, you could see, layers of soil. What is different in these type of questions compared to summary completion? But look, summary completions, straightforward. There is no diagram here. That's the main difference, and what is similar. So we're going to evaluate that in a second. Also, let's do question number 2, working with a partner in small groups. You're doing it online, so you might be working on your own, most likely. Use the space below to outline a possible strategy to help you answer your question. What is your step number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? All right. So let's look at the answers to these questions. So survey the text test questions to identify the topic of the lecture, right? So you'll have to survey the test questions to identify. So here you've got questions. It seems like it's talking about the layers of the soil. You could see that, you've got 34, 35, 36. By the way, it's a tricky one. The 34 is at the bottom, not on top. So be very careful with that. 34, then 35, then 36. All right. So let's read this, discuss the differences and similarities between these questions, question diagrams, diagram completion, and table completion and summary completion. So differences are not written in continuous prose, note forms, layout, use of visual, a position of items and not necessarily linear. For example, 34 at the bottom, 35, 36. You have to be careful with that. Much less reading in the diagram completion task compared to the summary. So summary will have more words. It will be wordy. Diagram, not so much. You will have the diagram. You have to pay attention to the diagram. Now, similarities, instructions in sequential order prepared. Instruction sequential order prepared by looking around the gaps for contextual clues to identify missing parts of speech, predicting logical answer, listening for keywords to know when an answer is coming up, listening for content words. For a diagram completion, we talked about, what are the steps you should be looking for, what will be your strategy. Focus on how the question numbers appear and focus on including to identify first question and the direction of flow of the answers as one of their steps. Now, table completion, focus on the importance of column headings. So in table, you'll be looking at the column headings. In diagram, you'll be looking at the order where the blanks are and what the diagram is showing you next to that, right? Cool, sounds good. Suggested strategies for diagram, read the instructions very carefully, right? When you get a diagram, read the instructions carefully, skim and read the diagram to get an idea of what it's about. You have to do it very quickly. You just can skim it. You can't do a detailed analysis of it, right? Identify the flow of answers and what you will hear first. So just the flow of the answer from bottom to top. Look around the gaps at other examples to identify missing parts of the speech. Try to predict possible answers. Look for keywords, which include when it's time to move on, and listen carefully for these. Listen and write exactly what the speaker says in answers, paying attention to word limit of the instructions. Very important that you, again, comply with the word limitation, okay? All right, let's talk about table completion. We already have done the table completion before, but in this part 4, we're looking at it as well. Read the instructions very carefully. That's the strategy. Skim read the column row headings to get an idea of what it's about. Identify the flow of answers and what you will hear first. Look around the gaps at other examples to identify missing parts of the speech. Missing part of speech, obviously noun, verb, what kind of part of speech we're looking for. Try to predict possible answers. Look for words which indicate when it's time to move on, and listen carefully for these. And listen and write exactly what the speaker says in the answer. Exactly, right? It should be the exact match, paying attention to word limit of the instruction. All right, so let's do this activity. I'm going to play the audio here. It's going to be a tough one. Obviously, this is part 4. Part 4, you don't get any break in the middle. All right, in part 1, part 2, part 3, you will get a break in the middle. In part 4, you will not get any break in the middle. You'll have to read questions from 31 to 40, and you'll have to listen very carefully, note down the keywords, and you have to write down the words exactly how they are mentioned. Okay, let's do it.
Section 4. You will hear a talk on the importance of soil in organic agriculture. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Welcome to this talk on soil science and organic farming. Dirt, soil, earth, loam, mud, or dust, it doesn't matter what you call it, is of primary importance in the production of food and other crops. Most people think of it just as a substrate or medium in which plants grow, but it's more than that. It's actually a living entity, or it should be if it's healthy, and human health is affected by the health of the soil. Healthy, living soil is literally crawling with life. There are the obvious earthworms, which burrow in the soil and help to aerate and improve it, beetles and other hard-backed insects, and various invertebrates like centipedes. Then there are fungi and bacteria, also living forms. Healthy soil needs food, air, and water to help plants grow. And the more nutrients in plants, the more available for humans and livestock. It stands to reason, therefore, that plants grown in poor soil will have few nutrients to pass on to the consumer, whose well-being will be worse off over the long term. So, where do plants get their nourishment? Most of it comes from the soil. Some nutrients are made up of minerals from the earth, while others come from dead plant and animal matter, which is broken down over time by the living insects and other organisms in the soil. Plants depend on these little living creatures to convert minerals and other vital elements into a utilizable form that can be taken up by the plants. And it's a synergistic relationship. In turn, the plants assist those helpful organisms by releasing sugars and enzymes back into the soil. Before I go any further, let's take a look at the structure of soil. Now, if you look at the diagram, you'll see that soil is made up of many different layers. Let's start at the bottom. This is the bedrock under all the other layers. The layer above that is called regolith. Here, the bedrock is slightly broken up, but plant roots don't penetrate this layer. Moving up the chart to the next layer, we come to the subsoil, which contains clay and mineral deposits. On top of that is the alluviation or leaching layer. This is quite light in color and is mostly just sand and silt. As we get near the surface, we find the topsoil. You will hear a lot of talk about topsoil amongst farmers and other agriculturalists. It's the most important layer of all because it's where seeds germinate and roots grow. Now, at the top of the chart, you will see a comparatively thin layer. This is organic matter that is still in the process of decomposition. It mostly consists of leaf litter and humus. Just think of the surface of the forest floor, partly decayed leaves and twigs, that sort of thing. As you can imagine, good soil forms very slowly over time, but it can be lost very rapidly through erosion. And in addition, soil quality can be affected by pollution due to anything from industrial waste to the artificial fertilizers used by conventional farmers, which have been shown to suppress the diverse life forms in the soil. This is why organic agriculture is the way of the future. Let's take a quick look at the conventional system, which is often based on monoculture, the production of a single large crop. It relies on chemicals for fertilizer and pest control. It is also becoming an increasingly common practice to use genetically engineered seeds. And more chemicals are used to control insects and fungi, which attack crops in storage and during transportation. Also, did you know that there is no requirement for conventional growers to maintain records of their production practices? Organic growers, on the other hand, choose the most environmentally friendly options for dealing with pests and disease problems, working towards prevention in the first place. Some of the strategies they employ include alternating the crops grown in each field, as opposed to monocropping. Because different plants add different nutrients to the soil, by rotating crops, the soil is naturally replenished. This can do away with the need for pesticides, because the problem insects' life cycles are naturally interrupted. Surrounding crops with green waste can not only conserve moisture in the soil, but it can prevent weeds from springing up, and it also feeds the beneficial microorganisms. When it's plowed under, it feeds the soil by building more organic matter. Organic farmers often release beneficial insects as predators, which precludes the need for artificial pesticides. Animal manure, combined with green waste materials, correctly composted to kill pathogens and weed seeds, fertilizes the soil in a way that encourages life rather than suppressing it. And by the way, use of manure in organic farming is highly regulated. In fact, all agricultural inputs are evaluated for their long-term effects on the environment, regardless of whether they are synthetic or natural. To sum up, organic farming is the only sustainable way of feeding the people on this planet and keeping both the planet and the people in good health.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers. That is the end of the listening test. You now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the listening answer sheet.
Right, so you must have finished by now. As you can see, this task is very, very tough. It includes a lot of technical information. Your background might not be from science and you might struggle here, okay? So the best tip that I can give you here is that do a lot of practice. You might want to do at least 100 before going into the real exam. If not 100, at least do 20, 25, 30, as many as you can, because that's how you're going to learn, and you'll pick up the academic vocabulary that's going to help you, right? So this is not easy, especially for someone who don't have a background in the academic, a strong background in academic studies. They might struggle here. All right, let's review the answers now. All right, number 1, 31, living entity. 32, nutrients. 33, minerals. 34, bedrock. 35, subsoil. 36, topsoil. 37, pollution. 38, pest control. 39, production practices. 40, predators. Okay, so I hope you had a chance. Some of you got all of them correct, but it's the most challenging part of listening, and you need a lot of practice for sure for this one. Here is, you can pause the video here. Here's the audio script for the first listening task that we did, and this one is for the second one, which is the hardest one, I'd say. You can read it, pause the video here, and you can read this one. And then this is the second part of the audio script and where the answers are here. For example, documentation here talked about, production practices, right? You might have noted it down if you were taking notes. All right, so this is our second last video for listening. In next video, we will again review part 4 of the listening test, and we'll discuss another section of part 4 of the listening test. I'll see you there.